You deserved everything you got. This is a Union City.
That is a Philadelphia tradition.
Seize the means of podcasting.
Oh God, the bosses crushed us.
Let me tell you one thing else.
In oldie-timey times,
Who said it? Kanye West or Thomas
we
Paine?
will not have raw dog reality for that one.
The pleasure of the flesh is in solidarity.
The Scab Buster.
It's going to be wholly unprofessional.
Keep together strong. Let that be your mantra. Mechanics Union of Trade Associations was like a general trade union. It was kind of like the AFL, so it was a bunch of different trade unions that would kind of coordinate together.
Okay.
And that
The Great Muta.
yes. So when the Cordwainers were defeated in court in 1806, after going on strike, because basically the judge was
Oh, that fucking judge.
yeah. So the judge who was just like, no, you're messing with markets.
Yeah.
So fuck you. I don't care if you want to eat. So that convinced a lot of the like leaders in the labor movement at the time that, maybe we need some political power. Fast forward 20 years, the Mechanics Union of Trade Associations was like kind of the start of all of that, of them actually trying to build some power. Then in 1828, so a year after Muda, they made the Working Man's Party of Philadelphia.
The
Wimpop.
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 The Wimpop.
Yeah, so they made a Working Man's Party so that they could actually like get on the ballot and try to have some political power. They didn't do well, but they were an early...
Well, they were the Wimpop.
They were the Wimpop, yeah. They were going against Jeffersonian Democrats and Democratic Republicans. So this was not a good time for names. This was also like it's a really weird period in American history where you
Okay, 1776 to 2021.
Yeah. I guess it's like the beginning of industrial capitalism in the New World.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so the dark times are coming. But you still have like people doing the like really just brutal labor that early industrial capitalism required. And then you also had like this artisan class. And they were they recognized that they had some common interests or at least common enemies, but they weren't quite organizing together yet.
Okay.
It's kind of weird.
I know exactly what you're talking about, Gabe.
Yeah.
He lies cunningly.
We'll get into that a little bit later. So, in addition to Muda and Wimpop, the Mechanics Union of Trade Associations and the Working Men's Party of Philadelphia, we also had the General Trade Union, or GTU.
We don't need to do this first.
Oh, we do. The General Trade Union...
I'm sorry, the GTU.
The GTU was actually founded in New York. And that was an attempt at getting all of the working men in Philly, New York, Boston, and those were really the ones that they seemed to have been focusing on. They wanted to get them all organized together to fight together. There were all these little parts of a labor movement that were kind of falling into place. And then getting into what we were talking about with like capitalism coming about. So you still had like furniture and tailoring and like a lot of the artisan crafts were still being done by hand. So like clothing was still being made mostly by hand.
Okay. It hasn't been streamlined.
Yeah, like the sewing machine didn't exist yet, so
it hasn't been Forderized.
Yeah. So you would still see, you still had kind of that, like, more feudal artisan class still existing, but quickly losing political power.
Okay.
Yeah. Because during the revolutionary period, the artisans had a lot of power. And they very quickly lost it as
industrialization started to boom. And that's where the money started going.
Yeah.
And where the money goes, the power goes.
Yeah. It's a great system.
It's the only system I would... What?
What? Oh, keep going.
Oh, Gabe, Jesus Christ, man. Let me have my moments. God damn it,
I thought you were quoting
I listened
Thatcher.
to you talk for 45 minutes, and I gotta let... Right.
I thought you were quoting Thatcher. Because she said it's the only option.
Why would I quote Thatcher?
I don't know. Let's say what you were saying.
I don't remember what I was going to say.
It's the only system that you...
It's the only system... What did Thatcher say?
I think she said... she said there are no other options.
You don't even know what you're talking about, Gabe.
No.
God damn it, man. Well, now you've brought Margaret Thatcher in this.
I'm sorry.
Can I just say that we just popped the Thatcher cherry? This was the first time that we've talked about Margaret Thatcher on this podcast.
And we're going to very quickly segue away from that so that we don't get visited by MI6. And we're going to go back to 1835.
Or the ghost of capitalism past.
Yes.
It's a bunch of Welsh miners. We gotta tell you about your future.
No. It has to go up at the end. We're going to tell you about
your future.
All right.
We gotta tell you about the bleeding miners.
Oh, the miners.
Thatcher. She's coming after us again.
So, getting back kind of on topic. Although we have mentioned Thatcher.
God help our listeners.
We have mentioned Thatcher to get off topic again. We've mentioned Thatcher without saying fuck Thatcher. No, we're going to go back to talking about the general strike of 1835.
1835.
Yeah. So,
personally, my favorite year.
Yeah. It kind of relates to Thatcher. It is about coal.
Jesus Christ.
Philly was starting to industrialize. And they were bringing coal, anthracite coal, down the Schuylkill River, basically on like big barges. Mm-hmm. And by 1834, they were unloading 227,000 tons of coal a year, which is over 600 tons a day.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah, all by hand, basically just with shovels, buckets, and carts. So... to feed this supply for coal, or the demand for coal, they brought in a bunch of Irish immigrants who were basically forced to work on these docks and unload coal barges. To make the conditions even worse, because just unloading coal and like breaking your back isn't enough. Your work day was basically sun up to sundown. So...
Damn.
In the winter months, you were working 6 to 8 hours a day. In the summer months, you were working like 14 to 16 hours a day. Yeah. Oh, and then the other side of that is when you were working in the short winter days, you were only getting paid for 6 to 8 hours of work.
Oh.
So when you like...
They never miss a trick.
Yeah. When you needed the money to survive, and probably you needed coal to keep your house warm, that was the conditions that they were working under. They weren't great. But around the country, you started to see strikes popping up for the 10-hour day movement.
Imagine that. Being like, hey, let's cut it back to maybe 10 hours. And that was like somehow revolutionary.
Yeah. And people still fought against it. But,
God, man.
So in May of 1835, the coal heavers, who were the Irishmen working on the docks on the Schuylkill, basically said fuck that. Or fuck this.
Feck this.
Feck this. So 300 of them walked off the job and left 75 full barges at the dock. Which also means there were like 4 men to a barge, and assuming each barge would have had 1.5 tons of coal on it. I'm doing
That's a
quick
lot.
maths.
Yeah.
Quick maths.
But I like the phrase 4 men to a barge.
Yeah.
That sounds like it could be something.
Yeah. They called themselves the Working Men of Schuylkill. And
The Wimas.
yeah, the Wimas.
The Wimas.
So we have the Wimas, the Muda, the Gatu,
And the Wimpop.
and the Wimpop.
My personal favorite.
So they didn't even demand an increase in wages. They just wanted a reduction down to a 12-hour day, which included an hour in the morning for breakfast and an hour in the evening for dinner or supper. So 10 hours of work
Holy shit.
in a 12-hour day. So the working men of Schuylkill were like marching, or Wimas, were marching around the city with a fife and drum band. They were chanting.
What an Irish thing to do.
Yep. They were chanting from 6 to 6, because that was the slogan of the 10-hour day movement.
Okay.
And they would put broadsides up all over all over the city. They wrote it in chalk on fences and walls. And actually, most of the city was behind them and supporting them.
Really?
Which is interesting because
They're Irish.
Yeah, well, yeah. But all of the newspapers were being like, well, these are reasonable demands, but they should really just listen to their bosses.
Okay.
Despite the fact that the entire city, or most of the city, agreed with them.
Yeah.
The workers actually marched straight onto Independence Square on June 6th and held a big rally there. And you also started to see French revolutionary slogans with liberty, equality, and the rights of man.
Oh.
So they're getting a little spicy.
Okay. When does the guillotine come out?
Surprisingly not. Which, I mean, they probably would have won a lot quicker.
Not that we condone those actions.
No. Most of the strike was pretty peaceful, but there were some fights with scabs. Because obviously they tried to break the strike. There was a pamphlet printed in Boston.
Okay. Yeah.
And that kind of like codified the 10-hour movement.
It codified it?
Codified it.
Holly, okay.
It brought it up to the Cape. That circular came down from Boston, and all of the labor leaders in Philly, from Gitu and Muda and the Wimpop, started reprinting it like as quickly as possible and passed it out to all of these striking workers, and then passed it out among all of the other working class folks in the city. And basically you saw like the entire city get radicalized in about a week. Shortly after that, 20,000 workers from multiple trades walked off the job and declared a general strike. Well, the term general strike didn't really exist at the time, but that's what it was.
Yeah.
The strike lasted a few weeks, and the journeyman carpenters actually established a cooperative warehouse during the strike, so they were pooling their money so that they could buy supplies, or they could buy the means of production, so that they could then go out and continue to work and make money during the strike, but that money went to them rather than the bosses.
It cut out the middleman of the bosses.
Yep.
Which is what they are.
Yeah. So
interesting.
There were some really like...
If only we could do that again.
Mm-hmm. There were some cool strike tactics that they were using at the time. And there's some... there were also... some workers would continue to work and then just leave at 6 p.m. And that was their involvement in the strike, was just like, I'm just going to start working 10 hours a day and you can take it or leave it. So it was really interesting. And there was also a lot of like mutual aid going on because, like we were talking about, one of the big things you have to worry about in a strike is actually feeding everybody. But the best part about this is they mostly won. And by the end of the strike, all of the major employers, including Eastern State Penitentiary, which was under construction at the time,
okay,
agreed to a 10-hour day.
Wow.
Because basically the entire city was shut down for a couple weeks. And then by 1840, the 10-hour day became federal law for government employees. So that wasn't a huge amount of the working population.
No, that's something else, though.
It's still something, yeah. And so this is one of the first examples in a citywide general strike in the U.S. And it was surprisingly bloodless. All of this to say, the general strike was cool, but also when people start decrying socialism as like a bunch of just young uppity millennials being stupid, it's literally as American as this fucking country.
Yeah.
And has been here since the beginning. And people just need to start listening to the people who do the work.
Yeah.